Next subunit is 2.7, Quality Assurance and Improvement Program. A very small subsection of this unit 2. Quality Assurance and Improvement Program, it is covered by Attribute Standard 1300, and again and again and again and again I'm telling you, no number needs to be memorized, but what it says exactly, focus on the essence. That's the crucial thing. In professional education, rata will not help, the memorization will not help you. Understanding, ability to do the question, that's the key. So don't need this number. Chief Audit Executive, who is the head of Internal Audit Department, I write the word IAA, that is mean Internal Audit Activity, Internal Audit Department, Internal Audit Function, name whatever you want to. The Chief Audit Executive is accountable, or in fact the responsible for implementing the Internal Audit Department's processes. Of course, he is the head of the department, so he is responsible for the internal audit function. So it is his responsibility to ensure that the internal audit department he is heading works as per the internal audit charter, which has been drafted by him but approved by the board of directors and the chief executive officer. That the internal audit department works as per the definition of the internal audit, which we have read in detail in your chapter 1. That the internal audit department works as per the code of ethics, the 4 principles that we studied, I'm sure you remember, and the internal audit department works as per the standard. So 4 fundamental elements out of these 3 are called the mandatory guidance, the definition of internal auditing, the code and the standard. These are mandatory, compulsory, and as per the charter, because charter varies from company to company, but the definition of internal auditing, code and standard, they are same for every organization. So it is the responsibility of the head of internal audit department to ensure that his department works with regard to the definition of internal auditing, the code, the standard and the internal audit charter. And it is his responsibility that the internal audit department operates in an efficient and effective manner. Efficient means use of resources are minimal, and effective means that they produce the result that is expected. Why internal audit is so? Internal audit department does 2 things: consulting and assurance, and then eventually it adds value to the operations of the business. I'm sure you do remember the definition. So the internal audit activity or internal audit department, it has to be viewed as an entity, an activity, a process or a function that is improving the organization operations. Remember, we are not into designing the operations, we are not into drafting, we are not into implementing the operations. We are only there to evaluate the adequacy and efficiency and effectiveness of operations. We report on this. So that's what our role is. This is how we can add value. We do not design, we do not draft, we do not implement any internal control system. Yes, the processes within the internal audit department, yes, this is what we design, draft, implement, but the operations in the business, administration, IT, etc., the operating activity of the business, this is the work of the executive management, not our job. That must be kept in mind. So how do we do it? How the internal audit department, the head of internal audit department, can discharge his responsibility of implementing processes? This is possible that he supervises the work of his subordinates. The head of internal audit department is the prime responsibility for him is to supervise the work of his subordinates and all working under him. So supervision is a key element of quality assurance, because if a new internal auditor has been appointed, he doesn't have the experience, but he has all the theoretical knowledge. He can be very effective, but under supervision he can be effective. So it is the responsibility of the head of internal audit department that he ensures that a supervisory system is in place, that any new recruit in the internal audit department gets supervision or gets supervised by some senior. Then at the same time, it is done through regular internal assessments. That regularly internal assessment, that how well the existing member of the internal audit department are, their competency level, their skills, their knowledge. Any deficiency could be then improved upon by training. Then again, regular ongoing monitoring of quality, how the work is being done, because internal audit department is an independent activity that we have already agreed, but they have to assess how well they are performing their work. So internal audit department assesses the quality of the work of the management, but who will assess the quality of internal audit department? We will read about that. There are two ways, internal and external assessment, through which we can assess the quality of the work of the internal audit department itself. And then we have the final is periodic external assessment. So this is how we can assess the quality of internal audit department via internal and external assessments. Further on, quality assurance and improvement program. What do we have? Co-op, or the quality assurance and improvement program, it's an ongoing activity. It doesn't stop. It's a continuing process. So it's an ongoing assessment of, because we have already agreed that the internal audit department performs two types of work, audit and consulting. What is the quality of our audit? What is the quality of our consulting work? The assessment of this must be a regular process under co-op, quality assurance and assessment program. So ongoing services that we perform for audit and consulting, they have to be assessed rigorously in a comprehensive fashion. And then there must be, okay, it makes sense that there has to be ongoing assessment of the audit and consulting work, of internal audit department. That internal audit department has a rigorous system in place of quality, a comprehensive system, and moreover, since there are three elements that must always follow: the definition of internal auditing, the code of ethics of the Institute of Internal Auditors, and the standard of Institute of Internal Auditors. To what extent are we following this? So that has to be assessed in this quality assurance program as well. So it's a rigorous program, it's comprehensive, and then it also covers to what extent do we follow these three basic things: the definition of internal auditing, the code of ethics that we have read much in detail, and the standard that we're just studying around. Then we have a performance matrix. Performance matrix means that these are elements of measuring the performance of internal audit, that how well we have done our work. The first of them is audit plan accomplishment, to what extent we have been able to achieve the objective of the audit plans for various engagements. Audit plan and all this audit working papers, we will read much about them in detail in the coming lectures, inshallah. So performance metrics, the first way to assess the performance of internal audit department is that to what extent they have been able to accomplish the audit plan. Cycle time, in the time to deliver, mean if the engagement was planned to be completed in 2 months, it was completed in 2 months. So that's the cycle time, that's the starting and ending of the process. That's also a measure of your performance. If the cycle time is being achieved, it means that the department is performing well. One very important point that you need to remember: recommendation accepted. Recommendation is the end result of our any consulting or audit related activity. We can only recommend. We do not have the power to implement this. What is the right way? When we recommend to the Chief Executive Officer for operational changes or to the Audit Committee for weakness in internal control, it is the prime responsibility of the Audit Committee that the recommendations that we have given must be acted upon. Otherwise, there is no use of internal audit department if my recommendations are ignored. Audit Committee must ensure that the recommendations that have been made by the internal audit department, they are disposed of, means they have been followed and implemented. I as an internal auditor will follow up, but I do not have the mandate and power to implement the recommendation. It will be done by the audit committee and the board. And finally, we serve various clients within the organization, the auditees or the engagement clients, to what extent they are satisfied with the services provided to them. That is also one of the ways that our performance could be measured, could be gauged. Further, on quality assurance and improvement programs, quality assurance and improvement programs includes an evaluation of conformance with DCS. It's a short word just to save time. D stands for definition, C for code, S for standard. These are three gods of internal auditing: the definition, the code of ethics, and the standards of internal auditing issued by the Institute of Internal Auditors. So to what extent are we following these three mandatory guidance? Mind the word mandatory: definition, code, and standard. They are mandatory. To what extent we are following this? It also includes an evaluation to what extent the charter that have been drafted by the Chief Audit Executive, to what extent that charter is adequate, to what extent the goals have been set, to what extent the objectives have been achieved, to what extent the policies and procedures are adequate. So it means when quality assurance and improvement program is implemented in a company for internal audit department, there has to be a regular evaluation of to what extent the charter is adequate, the goals for the internal audit department, the objectives and policies, procedures within the internal audit department are adequate. Remember, these goals are not the goals of the company, not the objectives of the company, not the policies and procedures of the company. They are all for the internal audit department. The charter, the goals of internal audit, the purpose, responsibility and authority, I'm sure you remember from the charter, objectives, policies and procedures. They are all for the internal audit department. To what extent they are adequate, so that internal auditor can work effectively. And then an evaluation. See, we have already agreed that internal audit does two types of works: consulting and assurance. Okay. And then for three specific domains: governance, risk management, and control processes. So when you evaluate the quality of internal audit department, you have to also evaluate the contribution made by the internal audit department towards governance of the company, how the business is managed, the risk management process of the company, and to what extent we have been able to improve upon the control processes. We do not draft, we do not design, we do not implement the controls. Rather, the controls are implemented by the management. We simply report on the adequacy and effectiveness of the control processes. So to what extent we have contributed through this way to the control processes. That's the part of the co-op, that the quality assurance and improvement program. Then, to what extent have we followed the laws related to the work we do, regulations, and the government and industry standards? All this are under quality assurance and improvement program. To what extent we are following the DCS, definition, charter, code, and the standards? To what extent the charter, goals and objective and policies, procedure of internal audit department are adequate? To what extent we have contributed in improving the governance, risk management and control process of the company? And to what extent have we complied with the applicable laws on our work, regulations, or any industry or government standards? And then finally, to what extent I have added value and improved the operations of the business? See, once we give recommendation, that is not an end in itself for improvement. Follow-up recommendations involving appropriate and timely modification of, so whenever the internal audit assessment on a quality assurance and improvement program is conducted, it is also assessed that to what extent the changes have been made in technology, processes, procedures and resources so as to make the internal audit department more effective. So that ends your unit 2.7.